That one. Yes. Come on. Okay. I think it's working now. Dang nabbit. Okay. Well, believe me, that was like the best, most amazing intro I've ever done to Tokyo tonight, and now I can't remember what it was. So I think I just got to wrap up the show pretty much. Um, yeah. Anyway, it's a feature. It's a feature of the show, as you all know. Not a problem. Not a bug. So yes, hello. It's 7:35 p.m. now, Japan Pacific time, Seattle time. It is 11:35 a.m. Monday on Tokyo time. So Tokyo tomorrow once again. Tokyo tonight, Seattle tonight. I suppose here in Seattle. Good to see people already rocking in, and I'm sure Kerber Stenchi, people just putting on their their good clothes and brushing their hair and getting ready, of course, for the live stream as people do. And Kerber Stenchi, I do appreciate. I know it's like super late for you. I'm amazed anyone from Europe makes it, so I do appreciate that. And I'm not sure if coffee is the right thing to have at this time of day. Sorry, there's a little bit of noise in the background. I got a ton of washing I needed to catch up on, so yeah, it's a noisy machine, but apologies for that. Yeah, really nice to meet Chris Rodham there in the chat there. Met him today. He took me out for pizza. It's kind of funny. I was I haven't got had time. I went for a run afterwards, and yeah, that's a whole separate thing. But yeah, my first pizza, a month and a half in America, or a month and a week now, and like I watch Barstool Sports pizza reviews every day, and yet it was yeah, for all of that where I kind of obsess over these pizza reviews. It's like I watch car reviews all the time, and I've not owned a car in 25 years. I watch pizza reviews every day, and I come to America and I was thinking, oh, I'm going to have pizza all the time, and I have today was the first time. So yeah, Chris, thank you for taking me to Zeke's. It was good pizza. I really appreciated it. Yeah, I had a root beer, a ginger root beer with it, and then and a pepperoni pizza, and then I went for a run for 12 kilometers. And yeah, eating a whole bunch of pizza before a run. I suppose the carbs, it's a form of carb loading, would be an optimistic way of looking at it, but it's not. That's not good pre-run food. But yeah, I ran a good time, and it was one. It was really nice to meet someone, to meet one of you folks. So Chris, great guy, and really appreciated it. Well, just nice to talk in person. So that was really cool. And yeah, no, thanks for reaching out and setting that up. So yeah, let's see who's in the chat anyway. We've got. By the way, apologies as well. I know because I am now. I don't have to be quiet in a Japanese apartment with thin walls late at night. I am speaking more loudly, I suppose, which makes my New Zealand accent come out a little bit more. Not that it's really a New Zealand accent, but yeah. Anyway, who have we got in the chat? So Kibris Tenchi, glad that you made it. Darren Schmee, boom time indeed. Glad to have you in the chat. We've got Chris Rodham. Yeah, thanks. Sorry about the audio feature. I don't know. Every time I boot this thing up, by the way, OBS may or may not crash. It's crashed a couple of times already, so, fingers crossed it keeps working. PB, audio doesn't seem to be working. Fixed it. Men's swimwear. Yeah, sorry about that. Well, I mean, I suppose the good news is by not having audio, it means I find out who's in the chat or who's watching. All the lurkers come out, so that's good. Great to see you. Papa Power, big thumbs up right back at you. Butter Talk. Yes, I was thinking I might have to do the entire show in mime, which would of course be a disaster. So yeah, good thing that was fixed. Tokyo 503, good to see you, Tokyo 503. Another person who I recently met, so yeah, excellent to see you. Kubristenchi, perfectly fine with coffee and then going to bed soon after. I mean, I'm not sure you should have coffee before you go. I mean, again, if it works, if you can get to sleep, I'm good for you. Lately I've been wanting to get coffee in the afternoon and when everything's like closed. But yeah, I don't drink coffee at night, but I do want a kick in the afternoon sometimes. Otherwise, I'm just gonna like go have a nap or something. So I definitely had a coffee today because I was exhausted. I'll come to that. But yeah. And by the way, for everybody, if you want to get my attention, if you, I say this every week, but just so that you know, if you've got a question or a comment, or you just want to say hello, you just want to like stand out, I will always pay extra attention to anyone who says my name, Hiko Simon. It flashes orange there, as you can see in the chat, and because of that, it means that I will pause on that. So do what Kerberos Tenchi and John Carlo Lanoya, a man from Philippines, is doing, and say my name directly. So Yeah, yeah. And incidentally, yes, I'm hearing in Tokyo, I mean, again, one of the stories, I think the earliest cherry blossom bloom ever. I mean, they just had this freakish warm patch where it was like summer temperatures. It was like 25 degrees Celsius, like for a week in early March, which is kind of bonkers. You know, it's so different to here. When I got to Seattle, the temperatures were the same. But in Seattle, it got colder and darker. In Tokyo, it got sunny and warm. I mean, really great to be in Tokyo right now, I guess. But the result is the earliest ever cherry blossom blooms in Tokyo. Kind of freakish. We're still a few weeks off that here in Seattle, but we've just had two really, really nice days here. I must say, when you don't see sun for like weeks, it's kind of like a Scandinavian, drama setting here at the moment. It's pretty like, and someone suggested get some vitamin D tablets, or you'll get depressed. So I bought a whole big thing. But yeah, 2 or 3 days now. I've even got a little bit of sunburn. Um, yes, I haven't taken vitamin D for the last 2 days. And hopefully that will improve. Apparently that's what happens in this part of the world as the weather gets better. But of course, Japan in spring, actually, you get crazy right now. It's 10 times the average load of pollen that you get. So if you get pine cedar tree allergies, and you're in Japan right now, get some Telfast or Teldane equivalent. You're going through hell. And this is another thing as well. Telling people to take the masks off in the middle of like hay fever season. It's the one time of the year normally, half of Tokyo wears masks outside of the pandemic. So yeah, also honestly, the weather is always really unstable. It goes from freezing cold to warm, and it's windy, and then it flips into rainy season, and then it flips into hot sauna. Don't come here for 3 months summer. So, it's not the best time of year, but I mean, if it's like right now, the temperatures are perfect and the cherry blossoms out, it's a great time to be in Tokyo. Yeah, anyway, Tokyo 503 mentioning Gussy was democratically expelled as a lawmaker, and mask wearing has gone from 99% to 92%. I didn't know about the mask wearing stat. Um, Democratically expelled. Yeah, big news this week is that Korean president visited Kishida, which of course I'll be talking. I didn't actually talk about Gussy just because it's so stupid. He wasn't elected directly. He was elected based on the party list. And the idea of the party list vote, actually it's a good topic, and I guess I didn't put it in there because I don't really care to even know about Gussy. He's just like a YouTuber who is in hiding for basically criminal defamation. He's hiding in United Arab Emirates right now, and Japan is trying to get him deported. So he's facing criminal charges if he returns to Japan. The anti-NHK party that now has flipped itself to the political party for girls 48 party, and they've swapped his seat. But in Japan there is a mixed proportional representation system. You can vote for a representative for your local seat. And then they make the final spread of seats in parliament. They even them out based on party lists, basically. So if the NHK, which actually ended up with enough nationwide votes to get 2 seats in parliament, they've got a list of representatives that they choose from in order, top to bottom, to fill out the other lists that they're entitled to based on the percentage of votes that they get. So basically, if NHK gets like 3% of the vote, they get 3% of the seats in parliament. And based on that, Gussy was on the top of the list. So yeah, he didn't show up for work, actually, I did mention this because that's right. An ethics committee basically voted to expel him, and the NHK party is going to expel him and replace him with someone else, which they can do because he's not directly elected. He's elected based on the NHK party list, so the NHK party can just appoint someone else. But yeah, he's a doofus. So indeed. But the other top, and mask wearing has gone down. I wasn't aware of that, but. Which is kind of natural in a way, but also, yeah, it's mainly social pressure at the moment, so I guess that's what's going on. Thomas Morris, our man from Philadelphia, who I have talked to on a Twitter, what do they call those things? The audio chat group. Anyway, good to see you, Thomas Morris, and for what it's worth, I was, in the NFL final, I was supporting the Boyds. Although they didn't perform very well, unfortunately. It was a good game. They performed very well. It was a good final. But anyway, good to see you, Thomas Morris. Lake Manson, good to see you. From North Carolina, wow. Sachifu. Oh my God, I have not seen a live Butter Beauty stream in Japan stream in a while, Sachifu. I'm the Butter Beauty. Thank you for clarifying. I mean, if there's another Butter Beauty, I would love to meet them. So thank you for the information. But yes, it was me, and I should have seen that. Sachifu, did I change my OBS layout deliberately? Yeah. I switched from using Streamlabs OBS, which is installed on the whole thing is installed on my home desktop PC. And since I'm traveling right now, since I'm in America for a few months, I switched to using regular OBS, and because of that, I didn't have the layout template. I'm not using the same software. So I've been meaning to get around to improving the appearance of this a little bit, but I haven't. I've actually been busy. I thought I'd come to America and have all this free time, but actually, no. Life is just busy. So yeah, it is what it is. If people have suggestions on how I could improve the layout or look at this, I would actually be open if anyone's got suggestions on customizing. In fact, if there's anyone out there who's good at using OBS and would be interested in helping me with creating like a new layout for Tokyo Tonight, I'll be all up for that. But anyway, I'm awake. Lol. Anyway, good to see that. Party list must abolish, says John Carlo Lanoy. Yeah, well, I'm not sure exactly what the situation is in the Philippines, but yeah. I mean, look, party list is good, that it means that if you vote for a party, that party will get represented properly, which it doesn't happen in America in places with first past the post. But yeah, the result is that the party list can be full of idiots that would never get elected otherwise. So this is what happens. Anyway, those are all of the greetings. It's great to see all the people who made it. 12 concurrent viewers, but only 2 likes. I beg you, please, like, because this is like the only, as you can see, I've turned off monetization. There's no monetization on this video. There's no ads, so I make it easy to watch, and the only thing I ask in return is, please like. Yeah, I just do it for peanuts, pretty much. So, Thomas Morris asks, is there any truth to the rumor that Jordan Mailata is a distant cousin of mine? I wish. No, believe me, I wish. I'd love to have Samoan genes, but I do not. But he is he's a great player. No. Yeah, I would say in spirit. I've actually got of rugby jerseys that I brought with me here. I've got 2 Moana Pacifica jerseys. Moana Pacifica is a club rugby team made up of all Samoan and Tongan players, but based actually in South Auckland, where I was born. The neighborhood where I was born in Auckland is a big Pacific Island neighborhood. It's practically like Samoa away from Samoa. So I feel like, no, I'm not in any way Samoan, but I love Samoan culture and people, and it's my home territory, and I've got Samoan rugby jerseys and stuff. So I'm a big fan of Samoa, but I'm not a cousin of Jordan, my lad. I'm just not that cool. But what can we do? So anyway, remember, please do click on the like button. I do appreciate that, and let's dive into the topics of what's been going on in Japan this week. I've been continuing to read the news, and I'm watching NHK every morning, so I'm kind of keeping up. But yeah, this caused some controversy, this first story. Now, some people would say, of course, Yokohama is the best neighborhood in Tokyo area. But some people said, wait a minute, Yokohama in Tokyo area? That's like saying New Jersey is the best part of New York. Which, yes, both are right. So this caused a bit of for a start, if you talk about Greater Tokyo, and there is a concept of Greater Tokyo. If you go I remember I actually had a cousin come to Tokyo years ago, and we rented a car, and I drove them from Tokyo to Yokohama. It only takes like 20 minutes, and there is absolutely no interruption of skyscrapers and busy, when you cross over, there's no separation at all. It's an arbitrary line on the map. I mean, of course, Yokohama used to be separate to Tokyo, but in modern Tokyo, it's all it is what's called a megalopolis. It's a contiguous city. In fact, if you catch the bullet train, you can go all the way beyond even Osaka. You can go from Tokyo as far as like Hiroshima, almost Yamaguchi, and not actually see like forests. It'll be built up. There are people living all the way along the bullet train line, for hundreds of kilometers actually. And there's been some arguments that they're the megalopolis, that now the cities have all just joined up along the little patches of flat land along the Japanese coast. And it's technically all one contiguous city. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but certainly in Tokyo it's like that. So when you talk about Greater Tokyo, as you may know, if you live in Tokyo, most people commute about 1 hour from Tokyo, and that 1 hour commuting distance circle around Tokyo goes basically where Tokyo is shaped like, like not Ivory Coast. What's the Senegal? Not Senegal. There's not Togo. What's the name of that country that sticks out? The Gambia. It's like the Gambia. It's like a little L shape that just sticks in like as a sliver. So the far west part of that, Hachioji, I used to live in, that's Tokyo, but Tokyo people like to joke, it's not. But yeah, you get Yokohama, you get Chiba, you get Saitama, and all those surroundings. And yeah, most people live, most of the residential areas are actually in areas that are outside of Tokyo Prefecture, but they're contiguously part of the same city. They're all on train lines that radiate out from Tokyo. And yeah, pretty consistently, if you're comparing between living in Chiba, Hachioji, Saitama, and Yokohama, Yokohama is hands down the nicest. And by the way, Kobe has a similar reputation for vis-a-vis Osaka. It's very much the same vibe. It's a port city like Yokohama is. It's a city which has the international schools. It's where the international sort of traders and everyone used to set up. Same with Yokohama, same with Kobe. But yeah, it's green, it's relatively new, it's relatively cosmopolitan, international. Saitama's, sort of inland and is on a bit of a plain and it's got shopping centers and stuff, but not a lot going on. And I don't know, Chiba's, it's okay. I mean, they're both okay. In fact, on this ranking, Chiba actually ranked higher, I think. Saitama ranked higher, Omiya ranked higher than Chiba. But yeah, Yokohama is the top one. But of course, the haters immediately came out and said, wait a minute, Yokohama is not part of Tokyo. And actually, I think the article said Tokyo metropolitan area, which I thought of as being the 23 wards of Tokyo. So I thought as actually being within Tokyo Prefecture. But apparently no, when they say Tokyo metropolitan area, there is actually a definition that, municipalities that have 10% of their population commuting to the 23 wards of Tokyo for work, that area basically, so that encompasses at least 10% of the population of Yokohama, no question, commutes to Tokyo for work. And that encompasses an area you can sort of make out on this map. Definitely most of Kanagawa Prefecture, most of Saitama, most of Chiba by the looks, even some of Ibaraki there actually, probably. Tori, near the areas where I used to live. So yeah, and that area encompasses 29, down the bottom, 35, as of 2015 had 35 million people. Given that Tokyo consistently increases population, it's probably more than 35 million by now. I imagine it might be close to 36. I mean, the population, of course, is sort of flattening out. Most places are losing population, but Tokyo is the only part of Japan that still is continuing to attract people. So yeah, by this definition, the Tokyo metropolitan area, Yokohama is part of it, even though I guess really militant Yokohama nationalists would probably deny that it's actually part of it. But yeah, there are all these different ways to cut it. There's the former 23 wards of Tokyo, or the 23 wards basically, the inner part of Tokyo, which doesn't include Hachioji and the external things that are called cities rather than wards. That's 9.2 million. Tokyo Prefecture, the actual technical prefecture of Tokyo, like if you have votes and representatives from Tokyo, I think the last count, this is 2015, it's now above 14 million anyway. And the metropolitan area is 36 million, and that's basically where you drive and you feel like you're still in Tokyo and like you haven't gone anywhere else. And there are other definitions as well. There's just taking the Tokyo, Chiba, Kanagawa, and Saitama all together there. It's actually only slightly different, the population. Most people do live within that particular zone. So yeah, Yokohama technically counts, but some people were like, hey, don't go calling Yokohama part of Tokyo, which is kind of understandable anyway. Back into the comments, I see Thomas Morris still talking about Jordan Mailata, the NFL superstar from Philadelphia. He and two teammates sang covers of the songs on Merry Christmas Charlie Brown album for charity, and I'm sure he sang it very well. Believe in yourself. Great to see you there in the chat. So yeah, personally, if I was picking, I think the best neighborhoods so actually I should come back here. I'm a little bit surprised by this ranking, frankly. Most popular neighborhoods in Tokyo metropolitan area. Yokohama does make sense. It is lovely. It is clean, it's modern, it's relatively affordable, and it's a great city. Kichijoji is also a very cool. I've worked in Kichijoji. I had my first, in fact, my only English teaching job ever was in Kichijoji. It's on the Chuo line halfway between Shinjuku and Hachioji. It's actually outside of the 23 wards, but it's kind of a hip neighborhood. I'm surprised it's that far up the list, but it's a cool neighborhood. It's got Inokashira Park, it's got great shopping, and it's a really nice area to live. Omiya, that is surprising. Omiya is kind of in the middle of, it's sort of way out in the suburbs. I'd go up there for rugby and stuff, and again, it's got everything. It's got big shopping, department stores and, everything, but kind of a bit of a featureless landscape. They've got good sports teams and stuff, and they do have parks, but I don't know. Not personally, not that nice. Ebisu is fancy. Ebisu is in markets like where diplomats live and rich people live and so on. Great restaurants, wonderful restaurants actually. So Ebisu would be lovely to live in if you could afford it. Shinjuku is, of course, the busiest train station in the world. I've lived close to Shinjuku, actually, and it's great that you can... It's a great place to live if you're single, at least in the sense that you can go out anytime. Someone says, hey, let's go for a beer, and you can walk out in 10 minutes, be in, the most amazing restaurants in the world. As a family, it's, like, super busy. Although that said, they've got great parks and everything. So Shinjuku, of course. Meguro, that's a funny one. I work in Meguro, and when I got back, when I was forced to stay in a hotel in Meguro for 2 weeks after I got back at the end of the pandemic, experiencing regular life, like on the weekends in Meguro, I was surprised. It's actually a pretty hip neighborhood. There's a lot of people, young people who want to live like as close as possible to Tokyo and are willing to live in shoebox apartments, do pile into Meguro, and they use the coin laundries and stuff like that. And it gives the neighborhood this kind of, I always thought of it as an old person's neighborhood, but no, it's kind of turned into kind of a hipster neighborhood. It's got great coffee places and good restaurants and stuff. So Meguro I get. Ikebukuro, again, I don't really get. Ikebukuro has a reputation of it's one of the mega stations around Tokyo, of course. It's where most Chinese people who come to Tokyo live. Again, traditionally the big Chinatown is in Yokohama, but that's like the old Chinatown. Most modern immigrants from China settle in and around Ikebukuro, so there's tons of Chinese there. Dating back to when before it became a very Chinese neighborhood, Ikebukuro has always been kind of grungy. It's like where people from Saitama enter Tokyo. All the train lines to Saitama come in through Ikebukuro. And again, it's got everything. It's got huge department stores. It's got great shopping, all of that sort of stuff. But, there's also been kind of that whole east side of Tokyo is like Shitamachi, which Tokyo is at the top of. And it's kind of characterized by there's like no trees. It's kind of grungy, kind of dusty. At least you wouldn't notice it if you come from outside of Japan, but inside Tokyo, it sort of has that feel, whereas, Yokohama and West Tokyo is very green and there are lots of parks and it's relatively new. East Tokyo, the old part of Tokyo, is kind of not so great, but it does have everything, but that is still surprising. Kamakura is like in Kanagawa prefecture. It's really far away. Like that's to commute from Kamakura to Tokyo. I think that's like an hour and a half. It is on the beach. There's surfing, there's camping, there's barbecues, there's windsurfing. Kamakura is like magical, but it's really to me it's so far away. I couldn't imagine living there and commuting. I could imagine retiring there. It's close enough to Tokyo that you could go into Tokyo for the day. It's lovely, but again, I couldn't imagine that being on a top ranking of Tokyo neighborhoods just because it's so far from Tokyo. But yeah, Shibuya, of course, young person's neighborhood. Tokyo, I mean, no one lives in Tokyo. I don't understand that. Tokyo Station area is just pure like banks and office buildings. I've worked there, and it is now actually lovely and upmarket and good for going out. It's become a bit like Ginza, but I don't think anyone lives around there. That's really strange. Shinagawa's got an upmarket, so that makes sense. Of course, you got the bullet train there. Urawa, same as Omiya. It's not bad. I just don't know why it's so high. Nakameguro is an awesome neighborhood. I recommend that. Musashi Kosugi is the most popular neighborhood in Tokyo. It's actually halfway between Tokyo and Yokohama. And because it's close to Yokohama but convenient to Tokyo, it's like real estate prices, I think, have gone up the most in that neighborhood. It's really hard to get places and schools there for kids, and the waiting list for like apartments there, it's got everything. It's got all the shopping that you want. It's got good access to transport. It's a really nice neighborhood. So Musashi Kosugi right now is like the hottest sort of neighborhood for families to move to. Omotesando is like a top rank. It's where basically all the models, if you want to see models in Tokyo, they all hang out at Omotesando. So if you just go to a coffee place in Omotesando, all the big fashion places are there, like the shops. But also the modeling agents, just good looking and rich people just hang out in Omotesando. I don't know why. For some reason they won't let me in. I don't know why, but yeah, it's a cool neighborhood. Nagareyama is where I used to live. Kashiwa. And Otakanomori, this is Tsukuba Express. So this is North Tokyo, but that area is, I think, in the realms of what was classified on that stereotype map of Tokyo as Johannesburg. It's got relatively high crime. And yeah, I mean, good people. I like living there, but I wouldn't go move back there. I don't know how that got such a high score. Maihama is where Disneyland is, so it's kind of nice and reclaimed. It is all going to sink into the ocean if there's ever a direct Tokyo earthquake, but yeah, it's kind of nice. Funabashi, yeah, Mikronji, Tachikawa, Sakuragicho. Sakuragicho is also near Yokohama and is very nice. So I don't know, this ranking, the scoring system here is a little bit weird, but I don't know. People in the chat, I don't know if you all have favorite neighborhoods that you like to live in, but for me, some of these high-ranking ones are honestly a little bit weird, but anyway. Yeah, I wonder if I just come back into the chat. Kerberos Tenchi, I remember living in Ome. Oh, you lived in Omishi. Okay, that's, yeah, so kind of close to where Hachioji is in Western Tokyo. And Yamanashi, it's nice being able to get into nature in Yamanashi and stuff like that. And you can go pick fruit and so on. Thomas Morris, why does Ken translate to prefecture and not state or province? Because that's the system that they use. They don't use states and they don't use provinces. They use prefectures. It's copied, I believe, from the Germans. The prefecture system, or the Austrians, or the Prussians, or so it might even be from the Prussians. Japan copied a lot of its modern governance system from that, and it just reflected the state of how the country was run during the warring states period. They just converted those. And they have a lot of, they're not full-on states, but they have their own police forces. They're more independent than, for example, provinces in places like Canada or New Zealand are, but they're not full-on states, which really are quasi-countries. So yeah, I think it's an appropriate term. Sachifu, topic has moved on. Happy to help you. I'm sorry. By the way, so I think I answered the question about OBS. More than happy to help me. Oh, thank you. Seriously, Sachifu, I'll take all the help I can get. I'm kind of struggling with OBS, honestly. As you can see, it's working, and that's good enough. But if you're able to help, if you can message me, like DM me on Twitter or something like that, I would appreciate any help. That'd be awesome. Also, you absolutely do not have to. I'm fine with this, but if it can be improved, I would appreciate that. Kerberos Tenchi, Akihabara is the anime town of Tokyo. Ikebura is the boys loves. I said that out loud. I don't even know if that's true. I mean, Nakano Broadway is also pretty big for manga and anime fans. And yeah, actually Ikebukuro as well does have a lot of huge, like manga stores and stuff. And honestly, yeah, Akihabara is like seriously like gentrified, which I think is probably a good thing for that neighborhood, although the way the maid cafe thing has kind of got, it's getting like it was never not weird, but it's getting weird. It's like weird and gentrified at the same time. It's kind of, Akihabara's got in a funny direction lately, but yeah. John Carlo Lanoy is really fixated on the Kanamara festival. That is in Kanagawa, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe that's why people love Yokohama. Maybe but I don't know. Maybe it's in Philippines. You tell me. I've not heard of it. Who knows? That'd be a very interesting local government. Wow, I didn't think I'd have a lot of topics, but I think I do. And I've got like through one, and it's 8:03. So, as usual, the 3 minutes past the top of the hour panic sets in. Let's speed up and continue on. 5 likes, please. I'd appreciate it if you haven't liked. Do remember to click on the like button, please. This is my biggest discovery so far being in Seattle. This Ellenos. People tell me that, I normally, like, after I exercise, I'll eat yogurt because it's got tons of protein in it and it tastes good. In Japan, it's like pretty sugar-free, pretty plain. This Seattle yogurt is the best tasting yogurt I've ever had in my whole life. I'm pretty sure they're putting crack into it. It doesn't taste legal. It tastes too good to be legal. People have pointed out to me that it is about 50% sugar or something. So yeah, the idea of eating this to be healthy, like after exercising, is apparently completely wrong. But I'm choosing not to listen, and I am eating this stuff. This is like the best yogurt I've had in my life anywhere in the world. It's Greek style, but they've gone and taken some liberties. And I don't know, if you live anywhere in the world and you ever get a chance to try Ellenos yogurt. Don't need anything else. Just have the Ellenos. There's like in a small container. There's like 2 meals of calories packed into it. It is so good. It is basically more like cheesecake than yogurt, and it is wonderful. And I'm gonna have some immediately after the stream. I've got a whole fridge full of them, and they might kill me, but it would be worth it. So that's a thing. This is also a thing. So Gussy, I did have an article about Gussy. Don't play the video because that's annoying. Stop. Everybody. It's kind of funny. When I heard that the ethics committee within Parliament had voted to delete Gussy from the list of parliamentarians in the Diet, it's funny. The committee chairperson who made the announcement I guess you can see from the thumbnail there, you might see the old man on the right. The left-hand side is Gussy, the YouTuber who, fearing arrest and imprisonment, is hiding in UAE and has never attended parliament to do his job once. So is being expelled from the NHK party and being replaced and kicked out of parliament. And some people apparently fight. He has some supporters. I don't understand how that can be possible, but apparently they're saying, well, but, you know, he got in there with votes, but he hasn't actually done his job, and he's like a fugitive from the law. Like, again, how the NHK party even put him on the list in the first place? The person who kicked him out from the ethics committee, the person who said, you are too unethical to be here in parliament, Muneo Suzuki, that guy on the right, yeah, he's just out of jail for taking bribes. So, you you done screwed up when Muneo Suzuki is leading a committee that says that you're in breach of ethical standards, even by his standards. I mean, he is the flag bearer of unethical politicians. Who literally, I don't understand actually how Muneo Suzuki is even back in parliament. Like, he should have been banned for life. He took bribes from Russia to put his name on facilities on the occupied, 4 islands, the Kuril Islands. He represents the constituency closest to the Kuril Islands, and a lot of people from those islands are voters for him. And basically, so he made it his mission to be the most Russia-friendly politician in Japan in order to get concessions so that people could travel over there. And he got a whole bunch of Japanese ODA, overseas development assistance, sent to Russia to build community centers on the occupied islands, which apparently he got kickbacks from the Russians, from the Japanese ODA, and demanded that they put his name on the buildings in these occupied islands. And again, when Russia invaded Ukraine, he was like the Japanese politician who says, hey, Russia's go to Russia, we should support Russia against Ukraine and all be cool because they might build another building for me. He took bribes, he was arrested and went to prison for taking bribes from Russia of kickbacks from Japanese ODA money, and he's saying that Gussy's too unethical to be in parliament. You have no idea. This is why I know that when I talk about Japanese politics that the crickets start chirping and the chat stops and everything, but this is really funny stuff. Seriously, yeah. That thumbnail is just, and I'm pretty sure the people who put the thumbnail up, the whole internet is reacting oh, Suzuki is saying that Gussy is too unethical to be in parliament. I mean, damn, that's what every reaction is. This is funny. I mean, seriously. Yeah, this is why you should show an interest in Japanese politics. But yeah, Thomas Morris says Ellenos must have chocolate ice cream in its thus its great taste. They don't have chocolate. It's not ice cream. It's yogurt, but it's amazing yogurt. It's like key lime pie, lemon, mango, passion fruit, apple, coconut. I can't even explain it. Go find it. Seriously, I'm sure they'll have it in Philadelphia. Very convex. Glad that you can make it. Ellenos seems to be available for delivery here in LA. I'm going to order some now. By the way, I'm not getting paid for this endorsement. It's just this thing I've discovered here that, yeah, if there's something that I'm going to miss about food from America, that stuff is the top of the list. I might see if I could become an ambassador for bringing it to Japan. Although I'd be an ambassador for New Zealand butter, of course, any day. I've been giving New Zealand butter all this free advertising, and they still haven't called me up, which is probably why it's still not allowed. So yeah. Hell, I mean, dairy products. If it comes out of a cow, although honestly, I think less of that comes out of a cow. I think there's a lot of sugar. A lot of that comes from sugar plantations, more than cows. But I'm still any dairy. As a supporter, humanitarian supporter of all dairy-related products, I would say try Ellenos. Shubas, good to see you. Welcome, our man from Panama. Your cup is nice and hot, but black. Don't need anything in it. It's too good, as it is fresh from the farm. Damn, that sounds so good. I must admit, Seattle, by the way, the coffee is excellent in Seattle. Oh, I didn't even share. So yesterday, I haven't got the photos. I put some photos up, actually. Oh, you know what? They are in here. Let me just check. Are they in here? I told you there at the very. Damn, there's so many topics. What am I going to do? I went hiking yesterday for the first time. It was a beautiful day. And we went to North Bend, Washington State, which is where they filmed Twin Peaks. I'm not a Twin Peaks fan. I've seen a couple of episodes. I'm like, what the hell is that? And, I never got into it. But that was filmed. That whole series is filmed in this town. And it looks like, I watched the show enough to know the look of it. And there's a cafe in the series, which is apparently kind of famous, and that cafe is a real diner. It's a real American style. I've never been to a real like American diner like on every movie or TV show before. So I went in, and yeah, I had a huge hamburger, and they actually have the coffee like with free refills for $2.50. And it was, objectively not good coffee, but it's exactly what you would expect for a diner by the highway in a small town. Like, it's kind of mud water, but it's what I imagine. It's exactly what I imagined American, people in movies are drinking when they stop at those sort of diners. So it was an experience. It was wonderful. But Seattle has excellent coffee. I must admit it. I am enjoying that, but it's quite possible that Shubis is having better coffee than the coffee I've been having. Berry convicts. Which flavors do I recommend? I would say I like passion fruit just by default. The lemon curd flavor. Start with the lemon curd. The lemon curd is like key lime pie to me. It's amazing. They actually do have a key lime pie flavor. I found out later on, but the lemon curd is what hooked me. After that, everything is good. I personally like passion fruit, but I would recommend starting with lemon curd. Thomas Morris, natto will be popular when I become a kanji teacher at Tokyo University. I'm sure. I don't understand, but sure, I'm sure that will happen. Very hard to go coffee, especially geisha coffee. I'm completely confused now. I'm going to move back into the topics because there are a lot. I think I've talked about this before. So, Japan to introduce mandatory helmet law for people on bicycles. I got a helmet when I was here actually because I want to use the e-bikes and stuff, which are super fun. They're like a little kind of bicycle motorbike. In Japan, you do have to actually pedal, like actually propel it with pedal power, although you can assist the pedaling. You can't just motorize like you can here in America. Makes sense though. I think we've talked about this before. Plenty of mums going around with the kid on the front, kid on the back, on the mobile phone, holding an umbrella, balancing the bike and ignoring traffic lights. And I've had episodes like when I've lived out in the suburbs and rented cars. Human head versus car, never going to be good. So probably, even though Japanese do often ride slowly, then they're not like all in road bikes. Like nobody rides casually really in New Zealand because it's kind of too dangerous. So only serious road cyclists are around. But in Japan, there's a lot of old ladies, a lot of mums on these mamacharis, like in that picture, and people do ride on the sidewalks and so on, which makes it relatively safe, at least for cyclists, but they still get into fender benders with cars, and it doesn't end well when a human crashes into a car. So the helmet thing does make sense, but it's going to be kind of a big deal. Into politics, it's kind of funny. I've mentioned, and I frequently mock the Komeito party as being a very shallow, thin veneer of a religious group, which can be characterized by different ways of calling religions by some people. It's so big, it is pretty mainstream. It's definitely not mainstream Buddhism by any regard. It does kind of worship its leader. So it is a sect or an offshoot of Buddhism, but it claims to have, and my experience is that it seems to be so, about 10% of the Japanese population are members of the particular Buddhist sect that is behind Komeito. So in that sense, it's always easiest to explain the party as being like the Christian Democrats. Like a lot of European countries have Christian, democratic parties, which generally are kind of left-leaning. Sokogakai, I shouldn't say Sokogakai, Komeito. I just said it. Komeito, their goal honestly just seems to be to, get influence for their group. So they're teamed up with the LDP to give them a majority in parliament. And, they seem honestly a little bit mercenary. Like they have principles that they state, which are very much like Christian Democrat. They claim as a, party backed by large religious groups that they think about ethics and doing the right thing. And they point out that their group as a Buddhist group was actually during the war when state Shinto, when everybody had to be Shinto, a lot of the Buddhist groups that were like, hey, no Shinto's not cool. Everybody should be Buddhist. They were all put into jail. They were treated as subversive groups. So it's kind of funny. There was a Shinto crackdown on Buddhism during World War II, and their group has a history of being the group that sort of stood up against the Japanese government and was seen as being subversive, which was a bad look during the war, but was a good look after the war. And it's why they were sort of permitted to. That's why they were allowed to carry on and be political. So from that perspective, you might think as a Christian Democrats that they might be in that confused position that Christian parties have of not being pro bigotry towards LGBTQ people at the same time as claiming to represent Christian values, but they're definitely not Christian conservatives, even though they are religious and conservative. They're aligned with the LDP, but the leader of the party is actually saying that. They're recognizing that public support for recognition of protection of LGBTQ people from discrimination is sort of overwhelming, and it's embarrassing for the LDP to just keep being so backward. The leader of the coalition party of the LDP is saying that guys, you're embarrassing us, being so outdated and backward looking with regards to recognizing with growing understanding, and again, it's not. Recognition of LGBTQ doesn't mean everyone has to be LGBTQ. It just recognizes that they should have less rights than other people. And even the religious conservative party is stop having a cow, or whatever the expression within the last 30 years for that is. It's pretty much what Komeito is saying. So, even even the huge religious group is saying, loosen up LDP, like seriously. Thomas Morris, next week, talk about Jofu, please. What's Jofu? I'm not sure I know what you mean by Jofu. Maybe you can leave an explanation, but yeah. Shubhas says, I haven't had coffee until I've had geisha coffee. I'll look it up. I had geisha coffee. Okay. I don't know what you mean by geisha coffee. So I assume it's not coffee delivered by geisha, because I'd be fine either way from that. But yeah, if you're giving me coffee advice, I'm actually, where's a pen? I'm gonna write it down. Do I have a pen here? I think I've got a pen here. I have a notepad. Oh, look at this. Seriously, because I forget these things sometimes. I am taking my notepad. I'm going to flip a page. So here we go. Geisha coffee. Geisha coffee. There it goes. I'm going to look this up. I didn't drink coffee till I was like 30 years old. And I kind of just tolerated it. It's like, I don't like beer. I just separate beer into what I can and cannot drink. But I must admit, I was the same with coffee for a long time, but especially being here in Seattle, where they actually have excellent coffee. I think I'm starting to tip over into actually liking. I'll actually now go and chase down good coffee. So thank you for the tip, Shivas. I do appreciate it. Thomas Morris says Rupert Murdoch recently said in email, it's not about red or blue, it's about green. Cool. Okay, Google. Yes, I will Google it. Thank you, Shivas. So anyway, we just mentioned before, in fact, I think Tokyo 503 mentioned in the very beginning that, we had the earliest blooming ever. I think I mentioned it as well. And there you go. So right now, of course, Japan is just spectacular. They plant these ugly, bare trees that make winter extra depressing because they have no leaves, and they have even summer they have like tiny, leaves. They're not very attractive trees. So basically, they have a tree that looks just absolutely fugly for like 51 weeks of the year, and then for 1 week it explodes and it's pink and it's spectacular and the most beautiful trees in the world. And they actually, the whole country willingly makes itself look terrible for 51 weeks just to have 1 week where it looks spectacular. And that week is happening right now if you're in Tokyo. So get a flight. Seriously, you want to be over there. But yeah, Darren Schmee points out that Seattle has excellent beer too. I must admit, the American beer has a terrible reputation overseas, and immediately Americans will say, oh yeah, but we have great IPOs, dude. IPOs. The Seattle has good IPOs as well, by the way, but no, the IPAs. And I've tried. I actually had a couple of beers. I didn't drink a lot to begin with, honestly. But yeah, when I was taken to the soccer, I was given an IPA beer in a funny can I'd never seen before, and it was all right. It was definitely on the drinkable side of the equation. I don't know. I'm not going to become a huge beer person while I'm here, but yeah, it seems okay. Saint and Sir, good to see you. It's 11:18 p.m. in NYC. I'm glad that you can make it, and thank you for the reminder. I've got to speed up on topics. Next topic, just a random thing. I must admit, while I've been keeping busy, like doing things and making bucket lists, and work has been busy, it did ease back a little bit this week, and I installed the Meetup app. And I guess this is global. I guess if you're in Japan and you're looking to meet up with people, literally meet people and so on, find clubs and activities and stuff like that, it's a pretty good app for that. And yeah, they had actually a group of like Spanish language exchange. And I think I mentioned here before, I actually, wasn't great at Japanese at university. I majored in Spanish. I haven't used it since I went to Japan 24 years ago. But I was much, much better at Spanish than I was at Japanese when I arrived in Japan. Obviously, it's not the case now, and I haven't even used Spanish like for 24 years, but I used to be good at it, and it's all in there. It's just I haven't, practiced it. So I was kind of thinking if I'm in America and, Spanish meetup, it'll be cool. So I went to a Spanish language exchange for 2 hours. For the first time in 24 years, I spoke Spanish for 2 hours with a lot of South Americans and Central American people. It was actually, yeah, there were a lot of, as you'd expect in America, there's a lot of really proficient speakers there. So it was cool. I mean, but my brain was like, it actually took me back. It made me remember what it was like trying to speak Japanese when the words weren't there, that struggle to find the word, and you know that you know the word, but you can't remember it enough, and it breaks up your whole flow in trying to talk, and how frustrating that is, and that frustration is what makes you get better. I haven't felt that with Japanese. I mean, I'm not bragging, it's just a fact. I haven't felt that like for 20, more than, geez. I mean, honestly, I felt that for like the first 2 years I was in Japan, and then I really stopped feeling it. I didn't even feel that for 2 years. I felt that for less than a year, honestly, but it was kind of cool. That was the growth stage. That was when my brain was expanding. But I haven't felt that for a long time. So it was actually kind of natsukashi, is what you would say in Japanese. It was nostalgic for me to feel like that kind of frustration. And the words are there. I was amazed myself at the vocabulary I was able to pull out, and I can listen and keep up. So it was kind of cool. But man, yeah, it was nice to use the old Spanish again, but yeah, it's funny because I'm so used to being able to show, effectively show off being. And by the way, when they get dubbing on, I didn't include that. When they get multi-track audio onto these vids, I do want to do a couple of dubs of myself, and have these go out in Japanese and just see if Japanese will watch them or not. I do comfortably talk Japanese, like yeah, probably more than half the time at the moment. But at least when I'm talking to people in Japan. But yeah, it's basically a second native language for me at this point. But yeah, I stopped doing it on YouTube because you just don't get as many comments from Japanese people. I like the interaction I get with the English speaking folks. But I must admit, the whole original idea of the YouTube channel was I wanted to sort of be a point for interaction with Japanese and people who are interested in Japan. I kind of failed at that, honestly, but it was just, when I had to get the minimum effort to keep it going, it was just, I was getting far more feedback and responsiveness from English people. Even though I'll admit the Japanese videos I have no comments, no likes, but they have way more views. So yeah, I'm excited to try multi-track audio when it's made available to me. But yeah, still waiting for that. But Spanish, I don't think I'm ever going to dub myself into Spanish. I could have done that 20 years ago, but I definitely couldn't do it now. But it was really fun to use it. But man, the feeling of the brain being so tired from speaking a foreign language, it was actually kind of nice to feel that. So yeah, Jofu is JP women who pay for it. Thomas Morris, I just bragged briefly for how fluent I am at Japanese, and I've never heard of Jofu. Okay, now that you explain it to me, Jofu, whatever, I get it. What am I supposed to talk about gigolos? Uh, you want personal anecdotes? Just thinking. It's probably not zero, actually. I've been in Japan for a long time, and I did have an interesting time, but I've never actually worked as an actual gigolo. Although I've had some funny episodes that probably came close. But I'm sure that's not what you're talking about. And I didn't know that there was a term literally on... I know there's terms for gigolo, but I didn't know there's terms for women who use fuzoku services. And you say dot... I don't know. I'm not going to linger on this. That's hilarious. But anyway, yeah, I wonder how the insects in Japan cope with that early bloom. I mean, they aren't really prepared either. Everyone's kind of freaking out. Nature finds a way. Nature adapts. Although, right now the bees are not struggling with the changing of. I mean, they are struggling with the changing of the seasons, but they are struggling with with cellular phones. Apparently, Wi-Fi and cellular signals are like freaking bees out and causing the bee populations to collapse, which is causing basically agriculture that relies on bees for like pollinating fruit and vegetable crops to suddenly, there's no bees anymore. So yeah, bees are struggling for all sorts of reasons, and it's actually a really serious problem. But I think early hanami is not high on that list. I think they can adapt to that. But yeah, Sachifu says I should try California's greatest product, marijuana. I'll tell you about the marijuana. I'm sick of it. I really like, I must admit, when I grew up in New Zealand, I think it was legal. I think it's legalized. I'm not sure it would be decriminalized in New Zealand, but that was after I left. But it was always around. In fact, when I was like at high school and university, there was so much government advertising against smoking that people would say, "Oh no, I wouldn't smoke cigarettes. Those are bad for you. I only smoke weed." And I'm pretty sure that smoking, I mean, I get your point, but like smoking anything technically, ingesting smoke is just generally not. It's generally carcinogenic, at least at some level. I mean, yeah, I know all the arguments that it's not addictive, and but people who say that it's actually like it cures cancer and stuff, I know the benefits, right? There's people with glaucoma, and there's all sorts of pain. People have arthritis, and all sorts of. I've heard all the benefits of CBD, and I don't doubt and even THC, and I don't doubt them. But yeah, there's a lot of but basically it was always around in New Zealand when I was growing up there. But you'd only ever smell it like when you're at a party, right? You wouldn't smell it out on the street because that person would get arrested. But you'd smell it everywhere, like when you go to house parties and stuff like that. And I just associated with it's a smell that, the cool kids would. I was never invited. They would always go off to another room, and, you sort of know it was basically, if it was a good party, someone would be smoking weed somewhere. So I know the smell, and I've even smelled it in Japan. It exists in Japan and so on. So it's always kind of like, oh, weed. When I first got to Seattle, I was going out running, and I smell weed, and I'm like, oh, there's weed over there, and then you notice it's like every like 30 seconds you're smelling weed. But lately, I don't know, when I'm going to work in the morning, I smell weed. When I ride the bus, I smell weed. When and actually, I even shared ventilation in the building I'm in. When I'm brushing my teeth at 7 o'clock in the morning, getting ready for work, and I smell weed, I don't want to smell weed when I'm brushing my teeth. It's actually too much. And it's, the smell, I've never had a strong opinion on it until now, but it's actually obnoxious. It's a really strong smell, and I never thought it was that bad, but I never experienced it everywhere, all day, every day. Time and place. So I don't know. I'm sure Californian weed is great, but I'm being around it too much here has completely put me off, honestly. So it's funny. I've been here, and I must admit, I've looked at the shops and stuff. Now I've got a Washington driver's license. I could go into a shop. I had a chat to the security guard when I didn't have a local ID, so I was interested to go have a peek, but I couldn't get in. And now I can go in, but honestly, I just haven't felt motivated to go because I'm just fed up with it. So I don't know. I might get around to it. I suppose it's part of the cultural thing here, but I'm feeling actually more put off from weed. It's too much here. It's like the kid who got caught smoking a cigarette, so the dad jammed a whole bunch of cigars in their mouth and shut them in a closet. That's what Seattle is for people who think weed is good. Just come here and you'll get it out of your system. Well, either that or you'll end up on 3rd Avenue by Pioneer Square with mental problems. I mean, I don't know. There's people. There's a lot of you want to advertise against using weed. Just come here and believe you. I'll give you a tour of all the things that make you think that I'm all for legalizing weed, but I must admit, coming here has made me think that, there seems to be lots of bad stuff associated with it. Not as potent as natto. Good point there, Thomas Morris. Or as cancer curing by reputation. Anyway, next topic. Record 1.8 million foreign workers in Japan as of 2022, which is interesting when you think that Japan's been closed for the last 2 years because of the pandemic. Their number is still going up. Of course, given Japan is losing 800,000 people per year or something at the moment. Maybe that's too much, but the death rate and the difference between the death rate and the birth rate is so crazy that they're thinking that Japan's population is going to go down to 70 million by the late 21st century. And what they'll need just to maintain current tax intake and the current economy. It's funny, Japan has quietly increased immigration, and they're making Japan easier to access for foreigners, and it is, but at the same time, wages are not competitive. It's opened comparatively, but I don't know that Japan is still in a position to compete for foreign workers especially with the yen being so weak, and it might not ever come back. So yeah, yeah, I think Japan does need to do more to open the taps, frankly. And and I actually think the way that the government's done it without opening up a big public debate about it, because what happens if any country anywhere in the world, when you open up a public debate, hey, should we have more immigration? That always goes badly. That never goes well. So I think the way that the Japanese government doing it kind of by stealth is actually the correct way to do it. But they have to do it more. But they have to do it more in a way that doesn't cause a backlash. So it's it's good news, and it reflects, and I believe it means that if you're interested in coming to Japan and working in Japan and living in Japan, it is much easier now than it was when I first got here, and I think it's going to continue to get even easier. And in fact, I think it'll get to the point. I think the Japanese government's going to have to pay the government's probably going to have to pay incentives and bonuses, just like they pay bonuses to people who have babies. I think they're going to have to pay bonuses to foreigners who choose to come and work in Japan. Like free air tickets to Japan to come here and work and stuff like that. I really think they're going to have to do it on that level to be able to compete for foreign talent, to support, to meet the actual needs of Japan's tax intake and population. So we'll see, but they're a long way away from that. So yeah. Anyway, also AlphaGo has pushed Go players to become more creative, and that's definitely happened in chess and shogi as well. It's another thing about AI. It doesn't replace. It's actually, particularly a game like Go, which has so many millions of combinations. And so, there's become, in all those millions of combinations, I think what AI is helping people to realize, again, from watching the AlphaGo documentary, what you appreciate, is that there are traditional structures of how humans play and strategies and so on. But there's a whole bunch of unexplored territory because of, dogma about how you're supposed to play, which AI is not constrained by and is causing players to now go into that territory. And this is definitely what you're hearing about in chess and shogi and so on. And this is where I really believe that, at least, I don't know, maybe AI is going to take over one day, but I think there's going to be a good period of time where it's going to help humans lift our game a lot, and that's the part I'm looking forward to. I was asked if this was fan service, this photo. This is all the 360 cameras. I say you should jump over it. Of course, I was wearing short shorts, but I think everything is held in. I was not ripping off the latest Lord album cover. I don't really follow New Zealand music, but apparently it looks like that. That was, I ran the Elliott Trail. That was 15 kilometers. I'm actually running a half marathon, first time in my life next Sunday. Actually, when I do the show next Sunday, I will be probably, howling with pain and ice on my legs from a 22. Well, although this was 15K and it was relatively comfortable. And today I ran 12K. I only meant to run 6K, but I got onto a bicycle trail, which I thought I could get off of at a point where I wanted to get off, but there was no off ramp. So I ended up running from Seattle to Bellevue, and then I was in Bellevue, and I had to come back because I parked my car on the other side. So I had to run 12 kilometers. I ran 12 kilometers by accident today, and my legs are a little bit sore, but I think I can handle it. But yeah, it was 15.4 kilometers. So, 22. People pointed out I ran 100 meters short of 22 of a half marathon a couple of years ago. And I was quite happy to stop, but I'm doing the Cherry Blossom run at Washington University next Sunday. I'm looking forward to that. So, I don't know. I kind of like that photo. Again, Japan shooting for, and I laughed and mocked when Japan was going for foreign tourists. And they destroyed that target. It was amazing, actually, when they set their mind to it, how they achieved it. Now Japan is shooting for foreign students. Again, the hurdles here are obvious. Japanese universities just don't have a good global reputation. The academic culture in Japan is just there's not a lot of peer review. Japanese universities are just kind of insulated and isolated from global academia, and they're not considered great. But there again, I suppose on the upside, with the yen becoming cheap, it means that paying for fees is probably going to become cheaper. And Japan does need the greater foreign interaction to lift their own game. So, who knows? Again, I think a lot of people at universities might say that, Japanese universities will never be able to attract 400,000 foreign students. Again, this was the same. It was exactly the same situation. Japan was so far from being competent to attract tourists when Koizumi set the goal. And they fixed all the things that needed to be fixed, and they did a great job. So I really hope that this becomes something that actually does that. I don't know if people here have an opinion as to whether they can actually achieve it or not, but I think it's a worthwhile goal. Speaking of worthwhile goals, Kishida, who I've criticized for having no ideas at all, just saying a bunch of sound bites and wearing suits and stuff like that, he has, by the way, I just realized this is slightly cut off. I'll move that there. There we go. He set a target of 85% of male workers to take paternity leave by FY 2030. And we've been I talked here last week. A lot of online debate has been pointing out that companies don't want to hire women. In fact, women don't want to hire women that are like in their late 20s because they think, oh, they're going to get married and knocked up, and that we're going to lose them for a year on maternity leave, and it's going to make it miserable at work. So there are companies that, and it's funny because men are at least cognizant that they don't want to be called sexist anymore, but women are quite open. I've known women managers who will say, they'll be happy to hire people who have grown up kids, or who have two or three kids already and are not planning to have more, or people who are like young and, but people between 25 and 30 where they consider they're going to get married and probably have a kid at some point, they deliberately avoid hiring them. And some people have pointed out the reason that there's sort of prejudice against hiring people because of maternity leave is partly because men don't take paternity leave. So there's no similar stigma against men. And they said the only way that you can remedy the prejudice against hiring women who take maternity leave is by making men take paternity leave as well. And this actually looks like a case where the government has listened. I mean, again, it's a tiny logical step, and it's just listening. It's not coming up with a great policy for one of Japan's big problems. But credit to him. It's a baby. To me, this is a positive policy idea that comes from Kishida. It's the only one I can actually think of that he's done, but he seems to have done that. So, yeah, that's a good thing. Whoa. We're over time. I can race through this. Ain't no party like a communist party. Someone in the communist party. The communists generally, of course, radicals and terrorists and Red Army members and so on. Back in the 60s and 70s, they've all mellowed out. They make muffins now. They say that the LDP is doing bad things, which they often are. And, with a stable 5 to 10% of the vote, generally about 8% of the vote, they're kind of a harmless opposition party of seemingly very nice people. But some people have lately noticed that the leader of the opposition, of the Communist Party, has been the same leader for the last 20 years. And in fact, for that whole 20 years, they haven't even had a leadership election. Apparently, Communist Party rules is that, the chairman decides when there's a new leadership election. And somebody had the nerve to say that, hey, same leader for 20 years, maybe this is why our party isn't gathering any more votes. We should have a leadership election to see if we can get a new leader. And, of course, the Communist Party decided party over for the person who suggested a leadership election. So, communists going to communists, what can you do? They seem like nice people, but they're still communists. So, I don't know. I'd love to go to a tea party and have muffins with them or something, but I wouldn't want to be a part of their party. Japan is, going to crack down again with this big burglary ring organized through social media. There are talks about Japan bringing in regulations that might, again, require social media companies to get personal identifying information from people with anonymous accounts, which Japanese are so sensitive about privacy that I think would be kind of a big deal. So it's a big question about how they can control crime via social media, given the huge emphasis on privacy in Japan. But the Japanese government's looking at this, and of course the fear that could lead to censorship and suppress freedom of speech. And really, the only place that Japanese really have freedom of speech because of the way society works here. A story down the bottom: hotels in Western Japan, your old-fashioned Japan, urged not to request foreign residence ID. So there's a thing here that apparently the law says that when people want to check into hotels, hotel operators are not required to collect their information, but for foreign visitors from foreign countries, there is, I believe, a voluntary thing of checking their passport and their personal information. But basically, this kind of rule is being taken has been interpreted by a lot of hotels who have zainichi, born and raised in Japan Koreans, who have Korean passports, to say that they will not allow them to enter into their hotel unless they turn over all their personal information and show them their passport, which doesn't apply to Japanese people. And again, it's mainly because of the zainichi thing. It's not about visitors to Japan or people on regular visas. It's people who are actually born and raised in Japan and are kind of quasi-Japanese, being forced to be treated differently from Japanese, not being able to go anonymously into hotels. It's kind of being treated as human rights violations. So there's now guidance going out to please stop being racist, basically. Which in Western Japan, remember, Western Japan is old-fashioned Japan. Like, they're racist, like, to Japanese people. They know which people were like the leather workers from 400 years ago, and they still treat them like outcasts. And they have the caste system, and they judge. They know from your surname and your address where you live, like what social caste you were in, like during the Edo period. And they don't do this in Tokyo because no one in Tokyo knows each other. But in Western Japan, they know all of that. They are racist to themselves as much as Korean people and so on. So still a problem there. Again, another story, more and more foreigners settling in Japan. And again, the government making it easier, which is a good thing, but still they need to do more. Yeah, again, the big deal, of course, this week, the Korean president visiting Japan, took him out for omrice, had a bunch of good photo opportunities, and it's all good news that they want to resolve this dispute over wartime labor compensation. The Japanese position is that all the compensation was paid, and it was agreed that it was settled in the 1965 Diplomatic Relations Treaty, and that any new claims have to be resolved by the Korean government, which is what the Korean government's proposing to do. They'll say, we'll take care of all the claims. But this is being interpreted in Korea as being like a complete sellout to Japan, saying that no, when the Supreme Court says that Japan has to pay, this is just South Korea, this is the government humiliating Korean people by not demanding another apology from Japan and new compensation, which the Japan position is that no, this undoes our whole diplomatic relations. This does the whole basis that we have relations between our two countries of tossing out the fact that we've already resolved the war problem. So yeah, on the one hand, South Korean government is making a huge step to reconcile and allow Japan to resume having normal relations. Japan withdrew its ambassador from South Korea and has more or less downgraded relations with South Korea to the minimum possible, and still having a presence there, which is amazing when you think that there's like nearly 1 million South Koreans who live in Japan, and so much trade and so on, and yet the governments have not been talking to each other for a couple of years. And the reason is that the opposition has just basically said that the conservative parties in Korea don't have any right to sell out the Korean people, to Japan. This is a political move, and when we become government, we're gonna, whatever deal they do with Japan, we're gonna totally trash it. And this is what happened previously with the previous deals, and this is why Japan doesn't want to do another deal, because it's just Lucy pulling away the football again. It's all good. Come kick the ball, Charlie Brown, but the opposition's going to yank it away because there's no consensus in Japan. Foreign relations with Japan are a party political issue, and Japan knows that the deal is going to be undone, and it's going to lead to a crisis. And there is actually an emerging consensus in Japan that it's just better not to try. When Korea's ready, when there's a consensus in Korea that they're ready to be friends with Japan, that would be great. But the idea, and the conservatives in Korea are generally more Japan friendly. But while they're going to be like back and forth on this and using it as a domestic political football, Japan just doesn't want to go along with it. So America, however, wants Japan and Korea to get back together because they're both allies and it wants them both. So America is like, okay, you've got 4 years before you probably get kicked out in the next election. So please, let's make all the deals and make this work as well as possible so that Koreans will be persuaded that Japan and Korea should be friends. The problem being, of course, as I've said 1 million times before, Japan is Woody Allen. Korea is Mia Farrow, and as we know, Woody Allen screwed and married Mia Farrow's daughter while they were married, which I think is incest. I don't know. So you can understand why Mia Farrow completely lost her mind and is never, ever going to forgive Woody, ever. And America's the super fan of Woody Allen, Mia Farrow movies, who really thinks that they're so good together that they should get together and make movies again, and believes that it can happen. And here's the thing, Woody's said sorry 1 million times, but it's not going to make the fact that he screwed and married her daughter while he was married to her. It's not going to. In fact, when I say her daughter, it's their daughter. They adopted. It was their adopted daughter that he had sex with and married. So no matter, they could go have a dinner together, whatever. It's never going to be fixed. And the idea that America can get Korea and Japan back together, Woody's never going to be forgiven. He is never going to forgive Woody. And, the idea that they should get back together and make movies is just a bad idea. And that's pretty much Japan and South Korean relations. Osaka Station is about to have facial recognition. I don't know. I think it's cool. I'm using that stuff here in Seattle. And, provided that you trust, and Japan doesn't have a good reputation on cybersecurity. But yeah, I do appreciate the convenience of it. But there again, the ticket gates are already so efficient in Japan. I don't know if it's necessary, but yeah, kind of interesting. And final topic, I went hiking yesterday, and it was beautiful weather. And can I see there? There were 4 photos here. Can I see the other photos? I cannot see the other photos, but yeah, Rattlesnake Ledge is like a crazy cliff which you hike up to the top of. Takes an hour to hike up. Really nice hike. Spectacular view. I feel like now I'm understanding why people say Seattle is nice. It's definitely not the grungy downtown and all the weed. It is the outdoors and everything being so convenient. Final run through the comments. I'm 15 minutes over. Damn, I thought I had no topics this week. I don't know. It always happens this way. Sainted Sir, you'll watch me next time. Gotta go. You have a good night. It's a late night for you, so definitely appreciate you joining, Sainted Sir. In fact, going back, Tatoeba Kanji, Kanji Kira, Goimi, Murija. Yes, Kerber Steiji, do I have some advice for getting through the Japanese job application process? Writing Jigo PR sucks so much. Yeah, Japanese, the only thing I can tell you to console you on writing Japanese CVs is Japanese people think it sucks as well. It doesn't really make any sense. If you're going for like a hardcore Japanese company, I don't really have a lot of advice for that. Typically, they'd say stand out, but in Japan, job hiring is often still treated by traditional companies as a process of elimination. And so people try not to stand out as a strategy for getting hired, which is so wrong. Honestly, I'd almost suggest actually, well, I'm grateful for the experience I got in Japanese companies because it allowed me to go get a great job in an international company. And if I'd gone straight for a job in an international company, I wouldn't have been as good at my job there. So I don't know. My best advice for getting jobs in Japanese companies is just develop networks, because if you're just another CV in the pile, it makes such a big difference to be vouched for. So what I would look at is job fairs, networking events, all that sort of stuff. It might sound awful, but the more you can get, if you want to submit a resume somewhere, having that resume, having a standard resume plus so-and-so from HR knows the guy and recommends them, that makes such a big difference for getting hired. Having that trust thing, that you can trust this person because so-and-so vouches for them, that's the best thing you can get. So I would focus on going to job fairs, networking events, all that sort of stuff, just to, if that is possible in the field that you're looking at. That's the best way to differentiate, based on my old-fashioned advice. Future topic. Landlords don't rent to foreigners, and those that do require 5 months rent up front, John. It's not as bad as it used to be. And 5 minutes, no, that's not really true. 5 months rent up front is not true. So typically in Japan, you'll have to pay 5 months, but what you'll have to pay is the 1 month for the real estate realtor's fee, which everyone pays, 2 months for bond, which again, everyone pays, and 2 months key money, which sometimes, most of the time, you also have to pay. Japanese have to pay as well. But for apartments that don't have key money, that waive the key money, which frankly is just a bribe anyway, those apartments are the ones that are often not eligible for foreigners. So they aim to be cheap to help out young families or whatever, and they say that those will quietly tell the realtor that those ones are not available for foreigners. So the difference is not 5 months; it's 2 months rent. And those are decreasing. But it used to be that there would be just point blank, no foreigners. It still is, honestly, apartment hunting is still just depressing. It's a good future topic. I haven't had to look for an apartment in Japan for a while. I assume it's improved, but I don't know how much it's improved. I think the fact that there are so many unoccupied apartments in Tokyo makes that something which is probably improving, but I don't know the latest on that. Woody Allen is an LGG. Yeah, that is exactly the thing, and kind of so is Japan, I suppose, if you think about it. And that is definitely the problem there. Cobra Senshi, then I will see what the Zoom call with gel engineering will bring. Yeah, honestly. Being seen as someone who's known and trustworthy and can be vouched for is the best way. Such a fool. I don't know if that's racist or just sad psychology. I don't know if you're talking about what I was just talking about, but yeah. The trauma of working at a Japanese company is maybe we're working for a Japanese company in the US. You never know. Here's the thing. There are good companies. There are bad American companies. There are good Japanese companies. It depends on the people who are running. I've also heard horror stories of Japanese companies in America, but it wouldn't put me off. You've just got to have your wits about you. When you're in the interview process, you want so desperately to be hired that sometimes you switch off actually your assessing of them. Try to get all the information you can get. Look up Glassdoor, look up the ratings, all of that. I wouldn't blanket not work for Japanese companies. There are some great roles in Japanese companies in America. And also a lot of Japanese companies in America have a lot of autonomy. So they can be great gigs, actually. But there are a lot of good Japanese companies. I get it, but I do understand as well the trauma element. I've been through that myself. But anyway, so that's it. We are 20 minutes over time, and I was not expecting that. I'm sorry. Thank you for keeping me company. Do remember to like if you like. There are 6 likes up there at the moment, 11 people watching. Thank you for keeping me company. I'll be back here next week. I've got nowhere else to go. 7:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time. Hope you're having a good week. Remember, stay safe. Don't get the Rona. And yeah, follow me on Twitter. See you later. Boom. Peace. That was a lot of topics. Anyway, see you later. Boom. Ending stream.